Today's project on Garage Time is to install this pedal cluster in this new to me 1987 Carrera G50 Cabriolet. So I rebuilt this pedal assembly a few weeks ago. This is the one from the different car. And I just want to swap out the pedals. I'll show you how to remove this pedal assembly. This is unique for 87, 89, which has the hydraulic clutch. This is the hydraulic master cylinder for the clutch. So it's a little different than some of the earlier cars, but should go in pretty easily. I got to lift it up to take off the two bolts that go here. That's where it attaches to the car. And then there's two more bolts that come off from the inside. The part we need to get to is behind this skid plate. So let's remove the skid plate, get to those nuts on the back of the pedal cluster. Couple rocks and crazy things underneath that tray there. I guess it's doing its job, protecting the bottom of the car. So underneath here is the fuel pump, some leaves, and then the two nuts we need to get to are these right here. So we'll spray those with some penetrating oil and get those off. This is where I just took those two nuts off, and now the two remaining bolts are inside. The trouble with two-post lifts is you're not really able to open the door very far. I mean, I could crawl in there, but because I'm gonna be working in the pedal area, probably my feet are gonna be sticking out, I don't wanna damage the door, so I can just take this post and unscrew it from the floor and just back it up. There, that's better. The other nice thing with this car is you can move the roof out of the way, and now I can get more light in there as I work on it. You guys should be able to see better too. And then if you're wondering why there's only one seat and it's the wrong color, that's because the stock seats on this, the sport seats, have been reupholstered in leather. And I just want to get this project done before we put the new seats or the recovered seats back in. So this is the seat from the red car. I'm using that to drive it back and forth from storage. The clutch system uses the same fluid out of the brake reservoir for actuating the clutch. So this is the line that goes to the master cylinder for the clutch. Here's the old one and the rebuilt one side by side on the table. They look essentially the same. The throttle linkage, this is what goes to the gas pedal. This one is a little bit different. It's very stout here on the end. On this one, it's kind of narrow all the way down. You'll see a lot of corrosion on this one. This is the one that was real squeaky, and it's got more play and more corrosion than the other one did. So the pedals are in. It's a little hard to work down there and talk at the same time. But I got a couple tips for you if you're doing it. It's not particularly hard other than laying on your side and trying to work sideways. Tip number one is I put the hard line connector on first because the hard line doesn't move very much and you sort of need to position the pedal in the master cylinder so that that doesn't get cross-threaded. So having freedom of the assembly to reposition so that that goes straight in is number one. Number two hardest thing was that 10 millimeter Allen bolt that holds basically the vertical stiffener bar. That bolt is hard to put in, and you don't want to cross thread that one either. You're dealing with a couple different forces on it. I did that one second, but I made a little tool which I think helped a lot in that small little space. So the Allen wrenches, you can only move them, you know, like 15, 20 degrees at a time. So even get the bolt started is really difficult. I was using needle nose and my finger to try to put some torque on it, but that's not great. What I ended up doing is taking probably a 5 millimeter bolt, which has exactly 8 millimeters across the flats here. That goes inside the bolt. Let me show you. This will go directly inside here, just like a short little Allen. And then the nice thing about that is now you have, I double nutted the end here, with this one has a flange on it. But that allows it to stick out just far enough so that you can put either a socket, which is also kind of too long, or I had a ratcheting 8 millimeter wrench. So that let me just do rapid spins on it and took a lot less time to put it in. I wish I would have done that taking it out, but eventually I realized I could just cobble those nuts together. Third tip I have for you, and I had to do this twice, you have to make sure that on the clutch cam mechanism, this guy right here, that cam mechanism cannot be pointing down like that. If this cam mechanism is pointing down, the clutch pedal will lock in place. So it has to be pointing up. And the only way it can get out of whack is if the master cylinder rod is disconnected, because this clutch will go way further down than it's supposed to. So you have to make sure that's pointing up. So now it's pointing the right way and it won't lock itself up. The spring has to be behind that little circle feature. When the master cylinder is disconnected, you get a lot more travel. Make sure the spring is where it needs to be. If it's in the car, you can actually loosen these two nuts on the front and the whole assembly will tip forward. That allows it to get enough travel so that you can get that spring in the right place. So I've already put fluid in the master cylinder or the reservoir. So now I'm going to lift the car up and bleed that line and also the slave cylinder. We got to pump new fluid all the way back to where the clutch is. So let's lift up the car. I'm also going to go ahead and put the nuts underneath. Once the nuts underneath are tight, that pulls the box all the way to the firewall, and then I'll go back and I will attach or I'll retighten the last 2 bolts that are right below the brake pedal and the clutch pedal. This one's going to be hard to see, but if you follow this hose, you can kind of see way up above the transmission. That is where my wrench is. It's a 7mm box end wrench. It's right there on the slave cylinder. That's where I need to bleed the slave cylinder. That's about the best view you're going to get. It's way in there, tucked high. Up. Down. Up. Down. Okay, so the bleeding didn't go very well. Could not get all the air out of the lines. It was 2-person method. My son Alex was in the seat and he was holding the pedal down. I was opening the bleeder, closing the bleeder. He's manually lifting the pedal up because it has that helper spring on there. So he did that, several times, and then I decided I would disconnect the pedal from the plunger, and he was just moving the plunger full stroke with hand pressure. That made it a lot easier to just do many, many cycles. We probably did 50, 60 cycles, up, down, opening, closing the bleeder, and we just couldn't get any fluid out of the back. So that means that there's just way too much air in the system. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna be able to finish it tonight because I think what it needs is gravity to do the work. The reservoir's full, the reservoir's up high, it's gonna flow. If I just leave the bleeder open overnight, that liquid will eventually work its way to the back of the car, and that should allow it to then be bleedable with the 2-person method. We'll do that at the end. That's the way it goes. Sometimes you gotta take a step back, think about what's going wrong or right, and then just reconvene in the morning. So that's what I'm gonna do today. I think the hard work is mostly done with getting the pedals installed, and hopefully it drives better. I can't wait to drive it. Thank you guys for being here. Don't forget, if you wanna join in on the Monday morning Patreon calls, it's a cool group. We just talk about your project, anything that you might have questions about. It's a video call. We just help each other with the projects and talk about what's coming up. So that's Patreon. I'll put a link in the description below. It's a couple dollars a month and you get access to more stuff and access to, like I said, that Monday call. We try to help each other out. So thanks again. We'll see you next week. Cheers.